You hear the name Warren Buffett, and you immediately think investing genius, right? But what if the story we've all come to know is, well, only half the story? Today, we're going to dig into the shadow of the oracle.
Oh, yeah, you can picture it perfectly. The wise, friendly grandpa from Omaha, maybe with a cherry Coke in his hand, sharing these simple, timeless truths about patience and value. He's way more than just an investor at this point. He's a full-blown financial icon, kind of like a philosopher king for our times.
But what if there's a cost to all that success? A huge, long shadow cast by those incredible achievements? Well, the source material we're looking at today isn't afraid to ask that very question.
All right, so let's start peeling back the layers of this legend. And just to be clear, we're not talking about which stocks he picked or which ones he missed.
No, we're going way deeper, looking into the systemic, maybe even the dark side of the very methods that built his entire fortune.
So first up, the price of the moat. We're going to start with the absolute cornerstone of his whole philosophy, this idea of an economic moat.
So what's an economic moat? Well, for any investor, it's pretty much the holy grail. Think of it like a moat around a castle. It's a structural competitive advantage that protects a company from its rivals. It keeps the competition out and the profits in. I mean, this is literally investing 101.
Okay, but here's where things get interesting. The source we're looking at frames this in two totally different ways. From an investor's point of view, a moat is a brilliant competitive advantage. It protects the business, it ensures long-term profits. But what about from a social point of view? Well, then it looks a lot more like a deliberate barrier to entry, something that keeps innovators and cheaper alternatives out and just concentrates pricing power in one place.
So think about that. The very thing that makes a company a fantastic, safe investment for someone like Buffett, the fact that it has little to no real competition, that can lead to higher prices for you and me. The source even goes so far as to call it a private tax on the public and says it creates a less dynamic marketplace overall.
All right, next section, the blind spot of trust. And you know, this idea of a hidden cost, it doesn't stop with moats. It also applies to another really celebrated part of the Buffett way, his whole management style.
His philosophy is pretty famous, right? Hire the best and let them run. He's known for being super hands-off. He finds great businesses run by what he thinks are great people, and he just lets them do their thing. It's always held up as this amazing example of an ethical, trust-based empire.
But can that trust become a kind of motivated blindness? That's the tough question our source poses. What happens when that trust is, totally misplaced? Can it create these massive blind spots where really bad stuff gets missed? And boy, does the source have an example for this one, the David Sokol scandal.
So here's what went down. David Sokol, and this guy was a top exec, maybe even the heir apparent to Buffett. He goes and personally buys a bunch of stock in a company called Lubrizol. Then he turns around and pitches to Berkshire Hathaway that they should acquire that very same company. Well, guess what? Berkshire does it, and Sokol makes a huge personal profit. An audit later finds that he pretty clearly violated the company's own insider trading policies.
And here's the kicker, the part our source really zeroes in on. Buffett's initial reaction, he actually defended Sokol. He said what Sokol did wasn't technically illegal. For the critique we're examining, this was a huge deal. It kind of showed how that whole culture of trust could maybe, just maybe, mask a serious lack of oversight.
Okay, let's move on to the last piece of this puzzle, and it's probably the most controversial one. Let's talk about profiting from panic.
You remember 2008, right? The whole financial world was basically on fire. And who swoops in? Warren Buffett. He invests billions to stabilize huge institutions like Goldman Sachs. The story we all heard was that he was this patriotic hero, the oracle coming in to save the day.
Heroism, or was it ruthless opportunism? That's the other side of the coin our source presents. Was he saving the system, or was he taking advantage of its near collapse to make an absolute fortune?
I mean, it all comes back to his most famous quote, doesn't it? Be greedy when others are fearful. And man, were people fearful in 2008. While everyone else was panicking, he saw a once-in-a-lifetime chance to put his capital to work. And these weren't just friendly loans to help out. The deals he made secured these incredibly tough, you could say punitive terms. They were designed really to extract huge value from these desperate institutions. It's kind of a harsh reminder that sometimes the biggest profits are made in the moments of greatest distress.
So, the oracle's mirror. Where does this all leave us? How do you tie all these threads together, the moats, the blind trust, the crisis investing?
What's the big picture here, according to the source?
Well, the conclusion is actually pretty simple and pretty stark. It's that Buffett's entire philosophy, every single decision, is filtered through one and only one mandate: maximize long-term compounding. Period.
And that's really the heart of the critique. He's not successful because he's a nice, folksy guy. He's successful because he is perfectly, almost coldly rational in pursuit of that one single goal, a pursuit that benefits from market restrictions and, frankly, the emotional mistakes that everyone else makes.
So in the end, the argument is that the oracle is a mirror. He isn't some kind of exception to the rules of capitalism. He's the ultimate example of it. He's a mirror that shows us the true, cold, unvarnished nature of the system that he didn't just play in, he absolutely mastered.
And that really leaves us with one last big question, a really challenging one. It's not just about what we think of one man anymore, is it? It's about looking at that reflection and asking ourselves, if he is the mirror, what does it truly show us about the system itself?